I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with sentient seaweed.
Also that podcast with 2 takes of this episode, because the original file is somehow non-existent. So this is our second take of this, after a 1-hour recording and a pretty good episode.
Yeah, we're going to see how this comes out.
And we both got barely any sleep last night, so instead of the good episode we recorded yesterday, you're getting this version.
Hey, don't sell ourselves short just yet.
Okay, I'll wait till the end of the episode to do that.
Maybe our minimal 5 hours sleep will actually make this our best episode yet. We don't know. Because we haven't done it before.
I have.
Oh, wow. So, yes.
Yeah, we have before we start, we have a correction on the death count.
Yeah. Back in the Abominable Snowman, we assumed that the Great Intelligence had died, so naturally we put him on the death count. And then, obviously, last week during Web of Fear, we found out he wasn't dead, so our solution to this is to just delete the Great Intelligence off of the death count and pretend he was never on there.
Yep. Makes sense to me.
Seems good, I mean. So, yeah, this week was Fury from the Deep. Probably the worst serial of the Second Doctor so far.
No, definitely the worst serials from the Second Doctor so far.
And according to you, the whole show, but we'll get there. We're going to have to try and explain this again.
Okay, we didn't... well, all of these were reconstructions, so that made it even harder to follow. But the plot didn't make sense, and we don't really know what happened. But we're going to try and go with it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did yesterday when we did the original recording for this. So...
Are we just going to talk about how the original recording was way better for this entire episode?
No, because we did that last time, and it made the episode way worse.
Okay.
So, the TARDIS lands in the ocean.
Well, I thought it materialized, like, in midair, and then slowly floated its way down into the sea.
Well, it did, but, I mean, that still counts as landing, right?
I guess.
They land in the ocean, and I guess the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria just walk across water to get to the shore.
They could have just swimmed.
Or they're Jesus. It's a good theory. Or
Right.
actually, maybe they just landed in really shallow water, and we just never considered that possibility.
I considered it, but then I was like, nah, they probably didn't. For some reason.
You ruled out the logical explanation for the completely illogical ones.
It's kind of what they did at the end of this serial. But anyway.
So yeah.
They're on a beach, and there's this weird pipeline thing, and the Doctor's examining it, and we see the first instance of the sonic screwdriver.
For the first time in the show's history, and probably the only time actually being used to remove screws.
But yeah, so something's inside the pipe, they assume, I guess, so Doctor breaks out the screwdriver, and then they get sniped.
Well, when you put it like
They
that.
get 360 no-scope. No.
What? Well, maybe they did. We didn't see who shot the bullet.
Yeah, but we also didn't see him spinning around like a madman. But no, they get tranquilized.
We forgot to mention the Doctor pulled out a stethoscope and was listening to the pipe and heard this ba-bum, 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 ba-bum.
Oh, I don't even remember that. But okay. Yeah, they're back to electronic music in this serial after the semi-orchestrated sounding music in the last couple of serials. And it kind of fit in this serial, as we'll get into later, with a couple creepy scenes, because as bad as I thought this serial was, it did achieve some pretty creepy scenes, I have to admit.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're tranquilized, and they get taken to some sort of base.
Yeah. I guess they pump gas or...
It's not really explained. It's
fuel or something.
Actually not really that important in the long run, but it would have been nice to know what the hell they were doing in that base.
All we know, there was a pump and a tube, and yeah.
Should we talk about the base under siege thing?
Yeah.
We probably should. Yeah. So, I mean, I read this a couple weeks ago, and it sort of ruined my enjoyment of this season, so I didn't mention it. But, I mean, now that you know, we might as well just mention it.
Yeah, because I read it just before recording the original take of this episode. Basically, the thing is, every serial except for one in this season follows a set formula of there's a base under siege, the commander is arrogant and doesn't want to believe anybody, and the second in command gets pushed around and ends up saving the day by going against the leader.
Yeah.
And basically the only serial this season that doesn't follow this pattern is Tomb of the Cybermen. Abominable Snowman, Ice Warriors, Enemy of the World, Web of Fear, Fury from the Deep all follow this formula.
And that's...
probably Wheel in Space. We haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's why I haven't been enjoying... Well, no, I know that's why I haven't been enjoying Season 5 as much as I probably would have been. And honestly, I might not have even noticed it if I hadn't read it.
Yeah, it's...
Enemy of the World did a good job of not having it be the same as the other serials, but like this serial and Web of Fear specifically had almost exactly the same plot when you think about the basics of the story.
And almost the Ice Warriors. The villains had a different motivation, but it was essentially the same story as well.
Yeah, and it had the freaking computer. But yeah, that is slightly disappointing. I'm not sure why they did that. I guess they just thought they could produce everything on the cheap and get a bunch of quick serials in.
Or maybe possibly, a whole bunch of different writers came up with the same basic premise at the same time because of coincidences.
Possibly. I mean, this formula, I guess it wasn't a formula back then, but a couple serials in past seasons have done this, but it wasn't back to back. And
to back.
And noticeable like it was between this serial and the previous one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of lowered my enjoyment of Season 5. As I've said, I haven't been liking these serials very much. I mean, they're okay. None of them are necessarily bad except this one. But but yeah. So where were we? They were taken to the base.
And they get thrown in a cell. They get locked in a room. Yeah, they get locked in a room. Meanwhile, there's Robson, the commander, who is adamantly against shutting down the pump because the pressure in the pump is rising, and Robson's like, nope, in 35 years or whatever since I've been running this base, we've never shut it down, and we're not about to start, so get to fixing it.
So the second in command, Harris, is completely against him, and there's this other guy, Van Lutyens, who's Dutch. And apparently, I'm just reading now, he's a representative of the Dutch government. I didn't know that. I thought he was some sort of inspector or someone for like another branch of this oil
That's
gas
what I
company.
assumed too.
Yeah. Maybe it's a Dutch oil gas
inspector
company.
Maybe it's the East India Gas Company.
No, it's not that. Yeah, we don't know when this takes place, actually.
The wiki says 1968, but I don't think in the episode there was ever a mention of what date it was, unless we just weren't paying attention.
Like we weren't for most of this because it was so incredibly boring and generic.
Maybe Robson mentioned the year he took over control of the rig and they just extrapolated 1968 from the fact he'd been running the rig for 35 years.
Possibly.
I don't know. Anyway, Harris mentions he has a report that'll finally convince Robson to shut down the pumps. But it seems, and we see this behind his back, but he doesn't, that someone takes the file away from where it is on the table. So he's like, what? Where's my file? Must have left it at home. So he goes, and now you find out the base is, I guess, divided into a civilian quarter and a military/operations quarter. I wouldn't call it military since they weren't really an army, but an operations quarter. And basically Harris isn't allowed to go to the civilian quarter while he's on duty. So he calls up his wife and is like, hey, can you get my file? She's like, okay. So she opens it up and she gets stung by seaweed.
Yep. And so starts this incredibly
convoluted chain of events.
I was going to say terrible villain, but that too. Yeah. Meanwhile, during all of this is like a 10-minute span. The Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria are just in this room doing nothing, like they do.
Well,
for
they're
most
trying
of
to
the serial.
escape. Jamie's trying to get through the air vent, and then Victoria's just like, hey, you know, I could just pick this lock.
Except she doesn't say that. She just does it.
And then she's like, ta-da! And then Jamie's is like, wow, Victoria.
Yep. So they leave. Is this the point where they tell Victoria to stay, and then...
Well, they leave, and then they're like, hey, Victoria, go back in the room, thanks. For no apparent reason whatsoever, I might add. So she does, and then she gets locked in, and foam starts pouring out of the vent.
Dun, dun, dun. Foam.
Hey, don't hate on the foam. At the end of The Abominable Snowman, the foam started covering the mountain. We were like, whoa.
Yeah, but that was good foam.
What?
This was crappy Fury from the Deep seaweed foam.
Wow. Just wow.
You know, when you think about it that way, it would have made it so much better if that thing that we thought would happen actually did happen at the end of this episode or serial. But anyway, that's where episode 1 ends, and episode 2 starts with something else that I forgot because I disliked this serial.
Well, Victoria was screaming, so Victoria Jamie
screaming. I wonder if that comes into play later.
Wow. The Doctor and Jamie are like, well, better go back and save her.
Even though they just told her to go back for no reason.
Yeah, so they go back and...
One of the first of many plot holes in this serial, yeah.
Victoria's like, hey, I was locked in. And they're like, what have you done to my base? They're like, the door is locked from the outside, yo, Robson. And he's like, oh, oops, sorry. So Harris has gone home because his wife hasn't shown up with the file yet. So he's like, what's going on? So he goes home and his wife is kind of knocked out on the bed. And Harris decides he needs to get help. And the base's doctor is conveniently indisposed right now. So he goes to Robson and asks if he can take the doctor, the Time Lord, the doctor, to look at his wife because he just wants her to get some sort of doctor to look at her.
Yeah, I guess they assume the doctor's a medical doctor. I mean, why would they think that? It's not like he's called the doctor. No.
Well, he does solve the problem.
Well, he does, yes.
Yeah, so
kind of.
Sure, okay,
well,
later.
Not really, actually, not now. But yeah, so Harris's wife has told him, and I guess everyone else, that she's been stung by seaweed, and everyone's like, what? Stung by seaweed? You're insane. So they lock her in... No, they don't lock her in the medical bay, but she goes to the medical bay. And,
well, before she goes, Mr. Quill and Mr. Oak show up, and they're like, we're going to just do a routine inspection of your kitchen.
Yeah, and they're pretty sketch.
Yes, her name's Maggie, so she hangs out in another room, and then Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill come, and they're like...
It's the worst way to explain what they did. Yes, there was this... This was the first of a couple creepy scenes, actually, and I actually liked this scene, despite this rest of the serial being incredibly slow-moving and boring. But what they did was, they, opened their mouths really slowly and menacingly and blew toxic gas into the room. I didn't know it was toxic gas until later, but, yeah, they blew something into the room, which knocked,
Maggie out.
Yeah. And, what I thought made this even more creepy was... the way they opened their mouths, you could, only see their canine teeth, and it looked like they had fangs. And I was like, whoa. It's pretty creepy.
And the scene was recovered thanks to the fact that Australia censored it and saved only the clip they cut out when they sent the serial back.
Thanks, Australia.
Good on you, Australia.
But yeah, so now Maggie's out of commission for some reason. We don't know yet. And it's...
Well, obviously because she got stung by seaweed.
Wasn't obvious when I was trying to get myself through these 6 episodes.
6 days of fury from the deep.
The Fury from the Deep challenge. Can you watch 6 episodes of this?
In one day. Back to back.
Yeah, I watched 3 episodes of this in one day.
Why would you do that?
Because I didn't know I was going to be so busy during the week. So I watched 3 2 days ago. But anyway, I don't even know what happens next. Don't even know.
The Doctor and Jamie and Victoria... Sorry.
Oh yeah, they find Maggie, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I'm not even going to...
It's the start of episode 3.
Yeah, okay.
Van Lutyens is trying to convince Robson of the weed existing, and Robson's like, you're just trying to sabotage me again, aren't you? Nope, I'm not having it. I don't believe you. But the second Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria go and collect some weed.
I think this is where they start referring to the seaweed as just weed, which was like the most entertaining part of this serial.
For obvious reasons.
But yeah, the Doctor wants to go examine the weed back in the TARDIS, and
apparently they're just allowed to leave to go to the TARDIS.
Yeah, so they go back, and the Doctor looks up the seaweed in this book of myths and ancient creatures he has for some reason, and it's in there.
Although he doesn't give it a name, which would have been helpful. Like even Bob. The seaweed is this ancient creature named Bob, come to bring the day of reckoning upon us. I don't know.
No, I guess it's just an ancient plant. An ancient sentient plant, as we find out
That's
soon.
come back to life for no apparent reason. Meanwhile, in the base, Harris sends someone over to get Maggie and take him to the med bay. So that happens. And then Robson's like, you let them leave? What are you doing, man? And Harris is just like, I gotta attend to my wife, Robson. Worst explanation.
This serial, in case you couldn't tell already, is mostly about these side characters and not the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria, which made it worse in my opinion. But I think we'll discuss that after.
Yeah. But this is the first of the many plot holes in this serial. The Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria in the TARDIS, and they could just leave, and no one would bat an eye. I mean, Robson doesn't really believe them, nor does he want them there. The only person who wants them right now is Harris.
Well, I just chalked that up to the Doctor wanting to solve the mystery of the seaweed.
Yeah, it probably was. But, Victoria could have pushed for them to leave more, given what happens in this episode and the next 3.
Yeah. I mean, her wanting to leave, like starting, I guess, at the end of episode 3, like she starts really wanting to leave and not complaining, but just worrying that they're always in danger and she wants some rest once in a while. And I guess there's semi kind of stuff leading up to this, as we'll discuss later, but to be honest, it felt kind of out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, she hasn't, I didn't think she'd expressed like wanting not to travel with the Doctor anymore, at least this much.
Yeah.
So that plot point kind of came out of nowhere, in my opinion, at least. But yeah.
And I'd like to mention the wiki also tries to make this summary exciting by mentioning the weed is growing out of the tank with an exclamation point instead of the usual period. Yeah, I don't think we mentioned, but they put the seaweed in like a fish tank kind of thing to examine it, and it starts growing out of the tank and moving, and then some other boring things happen. Wow. No, Robson goes insane. Is like, I'm out. I'm
yeah.
done. And he just goes into his room and gets locked in there by Oak, and then the seaweed attacks him, and he's like, ah! Then he just runs away.
So now Robson's under control of the seaweed, and so is Maggie.
But you're going to say it under control of the weed.
Oh, right. Yeah. It turns out the weed's trying to control people, in case you couldn't already tell. But, yeah, so is this where Van Lutyens does that stupid thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Van Lutyens decides to go down into the impeller shaft or whatever it is and dispose of whatever is making the problem in the pipe himself. And he does that and, almost dies.
Yeah, just before the doctor and Jamie go down to rescue him, but just before that, there's a scene where it's revealed that the medical guy never picked up Maggie. And everyone's like, oh, where did she go? And then there's this scene where they're on a beach. There's Maggie and Robson there.
Yes, I really liked this scene, actually. This was one of the redeeming scenes of this
standing there.
This was really creepy.
And then she talks to Robson like, you know what you have to do, right? And he's like, yes. And then Maggie just walks into the ocean.
Slowly. And this was recovered, which I liked.
Yeah.
And I thought this was really creepy. It had that creepy electronic music playing. Like I said, it was actually kind of fitting. Or I said that earlier. But yeah, I don't know. I just found her walking, like, into the ocean incredibly creepy and honestly kind of disturbing. Like, I always find things like this more creepy than, like, violence or, like, scare factor things in horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that contributes to that is, like, this scene took place during the day. And whenever you think of, like, really creepy things, at least I always imagine them or think about, like, yeah, those would happen at night or, like, someplace dark or something. But this happened in, like, broad daylight. And I find that contributed to its creepiness because, like, this was happening, like, right under everyone's noses. And no one noticed. And it was this big thing. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. The serial captured the creepy vibe well, if it captured nothing else well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now Jamie and the doctor are like, well, we better go rescue Van Lutyens. And so Oak and Quill are conveniently manning the lift. So the doctor and Jamie go down.
They see the foam and they're like, nope, not doing this. So they go back up. But they can't go back up.
Because Oak and Quill just leave when they're down there. So they climb a ladder out. And then they see Victoria, and Jamie's about to tell them that they almost died, but given the scene we forgot to mention previous episode where she goes all, you know, why do we always get in trouble? Like Daleks, Cybermen, Yeti. What's up with that?
Except she wasn't as calm about it.
It's true, she was screaming. But Jamie decides better than to tell her they almost died down there. Probably a good thing.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly when this happens. I know it was at the beginning of episode 4, but they cut to some sort of control room. And to be honest, I wasn't sure exactly what the point of this scene was, but I did like the reconstruction text box that said the technicians are nearly falling asleep from exhaustion and boredom.
Exactly how I felt watching that episode.
Yep. Maybe the reconstruction crew also didn't like this episode and put that in as a throw back to them 2 seconds ago hating this serial.
Well, I imagine it was more exciting to reconstruct the serial because be like, oh, what picture do I get to put here? Like, oh, gotta find a picture of the doctor from this serial.
That might be exciting for 5 minutes, but afterwards, after that, it'd just be
well,
like,
presumably you have
gotta find a picture of the doctor.
Presumably you have like 10 or 15 people working on it, so all of you have only got to do like a 6-minute segment.
Well, I guess, but I don't think that's how they do it.
They just all work together like, hey, who thinks we should put a picture of the doctor here? I do. What about a picture of the doctor with Victoria and Jamie?
I'd assume that that's kind of how they do it. Like, I think they would collaborate more than just like, hey, you go reconstruct this portion, you go reconstruct this portion.
Well, they probably collaborate more, but I think it would be way ininefficient for them to dedicate everyone to reconstructing the same segment at the same time. I'm not saying
like all 15 or however many people work on like the same scene at once. But you know what? We can probably look up how they do it and talk about it next time instead of like speculating like this.
We'll go do our homework and research it for in the future, probably next week, because we're running out of reconstruction serials, at which point this would be relevant.
Irrelevant.
I guess depending how you interpret that sentence.
Okay, this is irrelevant. Let's get on with episode 4.
Touché.
Victoria is freaking out again, wanting to leave.
And this is when Megan Jones shows up.
that really unimportant minor character who doesn't do much.
Except be a pain in Harris's side. Basically, Harris is taking command now that Robson has disappeared. And he wants to evacuate the base. And Megan doesn't want to let him evacuate the base. So he doesn't evacuate the base for basically ever.
Yeah.
Until episode 6.
Did we mention who Megan is? She's like some sort of supervisor. I don't think we said that.
She's a supervisor from ESCO, the corporation that I only learned the name of by reading the wiki page.
Yep.
And her assistant is Perkins, who doesn't really do anything relevant.
Yeah, she tells him to go home if he's not going to do anything useful or something like that. So I was like, go home, Perkins. Just go home.
Well, he does, so... Wow. Just going to be mean to Perkins like that. So, anyway...
Perkins' best character. No.
They seem to be unable to find both Victoria and a reason why everything's failing, and they're like, somebody's under control of the weed. Because someone must have kidnapped Victoria. And
spoiler alert, it's the guy who was under control of the seaweed.
Wow. Damn, I didn't even know that. Now you just spoiled it for me. No.
Well, it's not like... Well,
not like it would be anyone else.
Yeah. Then some more boring things happen. More talking between unimportant characters that this serial couldn't bring me to care about.
Anyway, Jamie finds Victoria. We actually forgot to mention this scene in our original summary of this episode, but she was unconscious and Jamie thought Victoria was just pretending to have gotten kidnapped to test Jamie or whatever, but
he did? What?
Yeah,
I thought he was like...
right at the end of episode 4. He was like, wow, Victoria, just tricking me. And she's like, I was unconscious. I was, the engineers kidnapped me, but it's nice to know that you care about me.
I probably wasn't even zoned in for that, but I thought he was like, I would never forgive myself if you died, Victoria. Or something like that. That complete 180 in Jamie's thinking. Yeah. So.
And they have a map on the wall, a la Web of Fear, that demonstrates the extent of the seaweed spread through the other pump stations, I guess. And all of them are taken over except the one conveniently the Dr. Jamie and Victoria are in. And the doctor's like, yep, this is an invasion. Seaweed. Just go over that sentence in your mind. We are being invaded by seaweed. Just let that mull for a second.
Whoever thought seaweed would be a good villain was wrong.
Hey, maybe the guy writing this had like a really close oceanographer friend. And he's like, hey, what do you think the villain should be? And he's like, seaweed, man! Seaweed!
Well, that just goes to show you never ask an oceanographer for advice.
Wow.
No, it doesn't go to show you that at all.
Trust your doctor, dispensing terrible life advice since 2014. So, now the doctor decides oxygen is toxic to the seaweed people because they emit toxic gas, so by that logic, they must be allergic to regular oxygen.
Yep.
Now, keep this weakness in mind, because in about 10 minutes, we're going to go a complete 180 on that, and you'll be upset because it was dumb.
But on the other hand, kind of good.
Yes.
Said. But anyway, I didn't know it was supposed to be toxic gas until the reconstruction text box said that. So they did a pretty poor job of letting the viewer know what was happening. Maybe you weren't supposed to know until now. I'm not sure. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, there was that scene where Robson just gassed the guard outside his room after he was under control of the weed.
Yeah. It was that. I mean, I still didn't put two and two together at that point, I guess. Mainly because I just wanted this serial to end. But
anyway, now Victoria's like, I wish we could go to the TARDIS. And everyone in the audience is like, you were in the TARDIS 2 episodes ago!
Yeah. In her defense, I don't think the doctor would have let them leave at that point.
Yeah, no, he probably wouldn't have. Based on his characterization for the past 10 serials or whatever, he
More
wouldn't
than
have.
that, it's been like
13 or 14.
Yeah.
But, so, They're all sitting in the control room and like someone's in league with the weed.
Directly ripped off from the last serial, or maybe the
Web of Fear.
Hey, we didn't consider this before, but maybe Web of Fear was the rip-off of this, and it just did everything way better and came first because they decided to air it first. Who knows?
No, because Web of Fear was written by the same guys who wrote The Abominable Snowman, so they were just reusing ideas they introduced in Abominable Snowman.
Somehow managed to be way more interesting than this, but I don't know. But yeah, so other things happen.
Yeah, Oak and Quill leave, and Jamie notices this out of the corner of his eye, and he's like, well, that's sketch, I'm gonna follow them. Then they start gassing him, and he luckily lands a punch on...
One of them.
Quill? I want to say it was Quill.
I don't even know which one was Oak and which one was Quill.
Well, he punches him, and he's like, yep, that was pretty good. And... the doctor's like, it probably wasn't your punch, but, you believe what you want, Jamie.
He says that?
Apparently.
I missed all of this.
I missed it too. I'm just reading it now.
No, I'm not surprised that we missed this, but then the weed invades.
And Victoria's gone missing.
Again.
And the weed takes over the control room. And the doctor and Jamie get in a helicopter with a buddy to go chase down Robson because he kidnapped Victoria in a helicopter. And he's like, I'm not giving him back unless you come here, doctor. And it's just like, why would you ask the doctor to come? Because you're invading the base and you already have seaweed that's in a position to kill the doctor.
Hey, maybe Robson actually wasn't under control of the seaweed and he was just sacrificing himself working as a double reverse agent to aid the doctor without telling anyone.
When your fan theory is better than the episode, what does that say about the writing of the episode? Like that other fan theory we came up with in the first recording, where this would have been way better if it was revealed the weed was under the control of the Great Intelligence.
Yeah, because, they revealed the weed is like an ancient creature, and so is the Great Intelligence. And honestly, we might as well go into this now. We were thinking that the plot line about the weed attacking and the gas base rig thing didn't really even have to go together.
Yeah.
They weren't pertinent to each other at all. So we were thinking that this serial could have been set in some other time period with like the weed attacking, possibly again after however many years, controlled by the Great Intelligence because they're both ancient creatures.
Yeah. And that serial would have been miles better than this one. Just because at least the Great Intelligence has some sort of vocalizable motivation. Seriously, in this episode, we never find out why the seaweed are attacking. They're just attacking.
And the Great Intelligence has already been introduced and solidified as an enemy. An enemy and kind of a powerful villain.
Yeah.
Other villains have gotten closer to defeating the Doctor, but the Great Intelligence held its own.
The Great Intelligence was up there in a list of people who almost killed the Doctor, but failed at the last second. Up there with Celestial Toymaker, the Daleks.
Daleks a couple times.
The Daleks a couple times. Yeah, because they showed up a couple times.
Well, no, one thing I liked about the Great Intelligence more than the Daleks, and I know it's kind of not fair to compare this because the Daleks have appeared so much and the Great Intelligence has appeared twice. But in the second appearance of the Great Intelligence, it didn't feel watered down or worse than his first appearance, or its first appearance. Because honestly, at this point, I kind of see the Daleks as a joke. Because, they've appeared so much, and every time
they don't appear for 6 years now.
Yeah, I know that. But, whenever they appear, the Daleks are attacking again. Those idiots, they're going to get defeated again. But, and obviously you know that most of the villains are in the end going to be defeated by the Doctor.
Right.
But I didn't feel that the Great Intelligence's second serial was... I disliked it more than the first, but I didn't feel it was like a watered-down version of the Great Intelligence itself.
Well, the thing that made the second Great Intelligence serial better than the first was because you found out some sort of, at least vague motivation for the Great Intelligence. And that's why Fury of the Deep also kind of sucked. Because if you remember back in The Abominable Snowman, I complained that we didn't know if the Great Intelligence was evil or not, because we never found out what its motivation was. Again, in this serial, we never find out the motivation for the seaweed. Just why are they attacking, and why should I care that they're attacking?
Well, we don't know. So
Episode 6.
Yes, episode 6.
Yeah, episode
Doctor...
6. They show up, the Doctor and Jamie, and they're like, "Yo, what's
good?
What's chillin', home slice?"
Oh my god.
The Doctor's from the streets of L.A.
What?
No, I don't know. So the Doctor and Jamie
They hear
confront Robson.
And apparently he doesn't have Victoria captured himself like he said he did.
She's just in another part of the base, and he talks in this great intelligence-like voice, which
For
is
one
what
sentence.
sparked. Yeah, which is what sparked this theory we created yesterday about the seaweed and the great intelligence. But
But that doesn't happen, so don't worry about it.
yeah, sorry to have raised your expectations so high with that genius theory, and then
We should have written
Crushing
this
it.
show. We should have written this show. It would have been so much better. No.
well, let's just get in our TARDIS, go back in time, do some covert rewrites to Fury of the Deep, and then come back.
Okay. Guess this episode's over. We're gonna go do that now. Have fun watching episode 6 yourself. No. Don't watch
And
episode
we're
6.
back from the past. Couldn't rewrite the serial, it turns out.
That probably would have changed history for the worse.
And
Much
we
worse.
didn't want to change history. Well, no, we actually did rewrite it, and then history kind of went to pot, and so we went back and prevented ourselves from rewriting it. And now you have to get the rest of the summary of episode 6, because you're not going to get our improved version.
And it was improved. Believe us.
It was leagues ahead of this one. Absolutely stunning. Probably the best serial of the Second Doctor. But
Probably the greatest work of fiction ever displayed on a screen in the history of mankind. But anyway,
so Jamie finds Victoria, and she starts screaming, and Robson's like, "Ah!" Turns out their weakness is loud noises, aka Victoria screaming.
Yep, not oxygen like the Doctor theorized. I mean, even that was kind of a pulled out of nowhere explanation, but this was miles ahead of that in terms of half-assedness, I guess. So yeah, they tell Victoria to keep screaming so they can escape.
And then they get in a helicopter.
And this is where we got confused, because the way they got to the rig they were on is that some sort of helicopter pilot guy flew them there.
Yeah.
And at this point, the Doctor takes control of the helicopter, but I wasn't, like, what happened to the pilot? Did he just, what? Like, where is he? Is he dead?
Yeah. The dialogue indicated the helicopter was circling the base still, and then the next scene, the Doctor's flying the helicopter, and it's like, wait, what?
And to make matters worse, I guess this was due to it being a reconstruction, but as they're flying away in the helicopter, you see a shot of the pilot flying them away. But the dialogue clearly states that the Doctor is the one flying the helicopter.
Yeah, because they have to tell him how to pilot the helicopter over the radio. Then there's this cool CGI shot of the helicopter weaving in and out of these pylons.
It wasn't that cool. It was okay.
So they arrive at
We've
the
seen
base.
better CGI in
That's true.
reconstructions.
They arrive at the base, they're like, yo, loud noises, Victoria, scream into the microphone, we're going to amplify it and just sound it through the pipes and kill the seaweed.
They do that, and they defeat the seaweed in half a minute.
Hang on, should we count the seaweed on the death count? I just realized we didn't do that.
Probably.
I guess we should count the
Yeah,
seaweed.
okay. So,
Originally we thought no one died in this serial, but apparently not. Seaweed died.
then again, we're not counting animals like those mice who died, so should we count plants?
Well, we counted the great intelligence, which is like a
Okay.
formless being.
All right, I guess. I mean, the seaweed was a pretty main villain, so we can count it. But yeah, so they end this plot with the seaweed 10 minutes before the episode ends, which I guess ended up being okay because of what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, in my opinion, overall, and I didn't mention this last time, but they shouldn't have done what happens next when they did. They should have done it later at some other point and actually nixed one of these episodes, not drawn it out so long, and had this be a 4 or 5 episode serial.
Yeah, well, I mean,
But we
a
should
lot
probably-
of the... Do you want to explain the thing that happens next?
Yeah, we should, because everyone's probably like, what happens next? What are they talking about?
No, we should explain the serials first, because then if we can explain what happens next and just lead straight into the retrospective.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, now it's kind of obvious.
Yeah, but a lot of the serials in this season suffered from the fact that they were 6 episodes long. Like, a good portion of the serials this episode could have been reduced to 4 episodes, and probably would have been far better.
Yeah, like I know we mentioned in Tomb of the Cybermen that it was good that it was 4 episodes, because it didn't feel like any time was wasted. Like, they didn't mince words and it wasn't drawn out, but at the same time, it still told its story fully in the span it had.
Yeah.
Abominable Snowmen, arguably, I think could have stayed the same, possibly been an episode shorter, I guess.
Yeah. The one that definitely probably could have been reduced is the Ice Warriors, and definitely Fury from the Deep. Yeah, I mean, maybe any Enemy of the World. The
Ice Warriors was a lot of back and forth between the glacier and the base, and like multiple monologues from what's his name, the leader, multiple conversations with the computer where in the end they decided not to do anything, and that could have been cut out. Enemy of the World, despite me not liking it too much, I feel probably could have been 6. It probably could have stayed as it was.
Web of Fear maybe could have been 5, but Web of Fear was for what it was a pretty well-paced serial.
I
so
guess.
Far.
I suppose.
Well, of season 5, excluding Tomb of the Cybermen, it was probably best-paced 6-episode serial, at least. Besides, maybe Enemy of the World.
But yeah, I mean, getting back to this serial, this could have been handled a lot better in terms of pacing. I mean, it's not just the pacing, it's the plot that was just boring, and the generic side characters that were focused on so much.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know, maybe they could have reworked some of the side characters' personalities, not done a complete overhaul, and then condensed it so their character development is more fast-paced, which would have made it better.
Yeah.
Not that fast-paced character development necessarily makes something better.
Right, yeah, no.
But when it's like this, I just don't want to see these characters doing anything anymore because they're boring. But yeah, so
we hinted at it, but we didn't spoil it.
So yeah, we kind of did. Our first take of this was better in the sense that we didn't.
Meh. We only spoiled it 2 minutes before we were going to talk about it.
Okay. So they're having, I guess, this farewell dinner for the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria. And Jamie or someone brings up that they're going to leave tomorrow. And Victoria's like, well, I don't want to leave. Because I don't want to be in danger anymore with you guys. And we all saw it coming. I guess the Doctor saw it coming. And Victoria's she hasn't fully made up her mind yet, so the Doctor tells her to make her decision and decide tomorrow, or tell him tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And
then he goes for a swim.
But yeah, what's their names decides to
Harris
and
Maggie.
They're like, yeah, we could take in Victoria. Why Victoria would want to stay at this base is beyond me. I mean, she does explain why she doesn't want to go back to Victorian England, which was nice because that would have been stupid if they didn't explain it. But yeah, Jamie doesn't want her to go, so he asks the Doctor to like try and convince her to stay, and he does so himself. But the Doctor says she has to make her own decision, and he doesn't. Mm-hmm. But then Jamie is like, "Hey, Victoria, you should really think about staying with us instead of leaving. And like, wouldn't you want to go back to Victorian England instead of staying here?" And she says no because she doesn't have any family left there. Like, her dad's dead, and I guess she barely knows anyone there anymore. So she decides to stay here in this boring serial.
She's in London, 1968. Well, not necessarily London, but she's in 1968.
Maybe she meets up with Ian, Barbara, Dodo,
and all those other companions conveniently returned to 1967-68.
But yeah.
They form a coalition of former companions.
Spin-off time. No.
Gosh,
no.
like that Dalek spin-off featuring Sarah Kingdom and Brett Vine. That never got made.
But yeah. Well,
Whoa. We did that in the first take, too.
So, yeah, it's the next day. Victoria's ultimately decided to stay, as we knew she would. Would have been stupid if she was like, "No, I'll come with you guys after all."
JK!
So she decides...
And then she gets killed off in the next serial.
No. But yeah, they're on the beach, and Victoria says her goodbyes, and the Doctor and Jamie, I guess, swim back to the TARDIS, and I guess they play the footage of the TARDIS descending backwards, and it ascends and dematerializes, and Jamie says he's sad to see Victoria go, and the Doctor's like, "I am too, Jamie. I am too."
And then it ends. Do.
Yes, it ends on that sad note.
It was sad.
It wasn't
the saddest so far.
It was like
sad.
melancholy. It wasn't like
Sad music didn't help. So, even though this serial was lackluster at best,
lackluster. This was the worst serial so far. I don't care how.
No,
I don't care how.
Second worst. It was better than Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. So, even though this serial was lackluster at best, I think they handled the write-out well.
Well, yeah, they did. They definitely did. And are we gonna go? Are we gonna go talk about what makes a good serialist? Then the Victoria retrospective.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Yeah. So we made this. If you've been following along, you know we made this list of what makes a good serial a couple months ago.
I think it was like 4 episodes ago.
It was at least a month ago. It was October 4th that we made it, I believe. Or October 4th that the...
So that was 1 month ago then.
Yeah. 1.5. But yeah, we haven't brought this up since then.
Yeah, because everything's kind of been mediocre, and it complies to some of the things on the list, and it doesn't like all of them or none of them. Which this serial, as you're about to find out, violates almost all of them.
Right, so we're just going to go through them in regards to this serial. So first on the list, we have story must make sense. This didn't, in case you couldn't tell. There were multiple plot holes, random, disjointed things that happened for no reason.
The biggest offender was clearly the first oxygen as a weakness, and then loud noises as a weakness.
Yeah, like, why even bring the oxygen thing up? Did they think they were going to go somewhere with that, then decide to do a 180 on it at the last minute? I mean, that's all I can think. That's what the serial makes me think. I mean...
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I guess we probably should talk about this in our Victoria retrospective coming up, but makes sense to talk about it now. At least they had Victoria be a major part of defeating the seaweed in her final serial. Unlike Dodo, Ben and Polly, other companions who were just absent or did nothing in their final serial. So at least there was that. But,
villain should be memorable.
Seaweed.
There's no one who's gonna be like, you know what villain they should bring back in the reboot? The weed from Fury from the Deep. Like, that's a good plan. Stephen Moffat's sitting at his desk right now listening to this podcast, and he's like, you know what the overarching villain for season 9 should be? The seaweed. and then all the fans are gonna be like, what? Seaweed? And then they're all gonna watch Fury of the Deep and be like,
why bring this
why?
back? I question why it was even brought into the show in the first place.
I told you, he had an oceanographer friend. Obviously, this is the only explanation.
Sure, okay. 3 characters can't be out of character. That wasn't really a problem, but the secondary characters in this serial did more than the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria, which I didn't like because they were boring. And
until episode 6, where Victoria had her lost hurrah.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I'm okay with the characters from each individual serial doing things alongside the Doctor and his companions, but not when they, one, are generic, boring, and not fun to watch, and two, when they actually show up more, do more, and have more screen time than the main characters.
Mm-hmm. If you're going to have the side characters carry the story, they've got to be interesting enough to do so.
Right. I mean, this serial, I know we keep saying they're generic, but we should probably explain how we think that, I guess. I mean, that they were just generic scientists, and again, they fell into that mold of serial we've seen for the past however many serials in season 5.
5.
With the...
4. 5, 4.
Yeah, with the stubborn first in command, and then the second in command who takes over. I mean, we've seen it however many times now, 4 or 5, and this serial didn't do anything interesting with it.
Yeah, the serial's the most generic out of all of the Base Under Siege ones, I would say. Because at least the other ones, there was all the leaders in command had like...
They at least had a different personality quirk or motive.
Yeah, they all had like identifiable or non-identifiable in the case of what's his name in his computer, but sort of identifiable.
Well, that was identifiable because he just trusted the computer. And
yeah, well, it's identifiable today. It wouldn't have been in 68, but...
Why not?
Computers weren't as widespread there. Personal computing was not as common.
People knew what computers were, and they knew they were used for, like, government stuff.
But I don't think they predicted that they would have been as dependent or use them as much as we do today.
I guess when you put it that way, people of today can connect to that serial more.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a big fear, like back when computers were first starting to become used, which the 60s might have been too early for that, but I think it was a big fear that like AI would take over.
Yeah.
And that people would become super dependent on computers, which has somewhat happened. I mean, not in the way that people predicted, but definitely has somewhat happened. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but
reconstructions usually aren't enjoyable.
That's just, there's no control over that. It's not the fault of this serial, but it's true, so... Yeah.
Bad write-outs can ruin a serial.
And, yeah, conversely, good write-outs can salvage a serial, to be honest, because Victoria's write-out was pretty good compared to what we've seen so far. Enjoyable. Felt sort of out of the blue, but at least it wasn't, hey, I'm just leaving in the final episode. So I felt like that kind of was a redeeming quality of this serial.
Mm-hmm. If nothing else, at least they introduced the thread that Victoria would leave early in the serial and not like, oh, it's episode 6, bye guys.
Yeah. I mean, they've done that at times. Dodo. Yes, so... For 6, we have no character should be left out of the action. That kind of goes along with what we said before, with the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria not doing as much for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we covered that.
Yeah.
So 7, character development is usually a plus. Of course, there's not every serial is gonna be full-on character development because of how long and drawn out the show is. But this serial had it in the end, definitely, with the Doctor and Jamie.
Yeah. The write-out definitely showed that the Doctor puts other people's happiness above himself. Especially when he's leaving at the end. He's like, I was fond of her too, Jamie. But he wants Victoria to do what's going to make her happy and not what's going to make the Doctor or Jamie happy.
Right.
I mean, and you saw that in Web of Fear too, where he was willing to basically submit to the great intelligence if everybody else got to live. So...
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of leads us into the Victoria retrospective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Victoria, one of my favorite companions. In her time on the show, she did a lot. I mean, I didn't feel that there was ever a time where she was like season 1 Barbara, who like just there.
Just cause.
And I guess that's partly responsible. I mean, her personality and character development is partly responsible for that. But also the fact that there are 3 characters. I mean, when there's 4, there's, as we've said this before, but there's usually one who like doesn't do stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to give everybody something to do when you have a 4-person TARDIS crew.
Yeah.
But Victoria's definitely my favorite female companion so far, of the classic series, that is.
Yeah, I mean, she was different from the past female companions. Like, if you remember the Susan to Vicky transition, they had almost the same personality and character, to be honest. And I guess that was partly due to the fact that Susan's write-out wasn't due to, like, it wasn't for story reasons, it was because her actor wanted to leave.
Yeah.
So I guess they wanted to keep that same sort of character, so they just introduced Vicky.
I mean, and I just realized this is the first TARDIS crew to be composed of nobody from present-day London or England, present day being the day the serial aired. If you exclude the Dalek master plan, since that was just Steven and the Doctor and Steven's from the future. But if you look back, the Doctor's always traveled with someone from present-day England.
Yeah, and that's almost definitely to, like, ground the show and have someone that the characters or that the viewers can relate to and say things that the viewers would understand.
Yeah,
rather than like super sci-fi future things.
I mean, and this has been a problem with the reboot, in which every companion has been from present day England, and a lot of people are like calling like, hey, like, we need someone who's not from present day England. And I think that just goes to show that Victoria and Jamie are one of the best TARDIS crews out there, because they're all from different times and they all experience the events of the serials in different ways, which I think makes the show more interesting than just having like a TARDIS crew that's like, I'm from England in 1968.
You're from England in 1967.
High five.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to having those modern day, English characters, but like not back to back, not when the crew's fully composed of those characters. So yeah, this was definitely good.
Yeah,
it allowed them to do some humorous scenes too, because they're both from the past.
Yeah, like, what's a helicopter? A whirly bird, Jamie. Don't you know? He says it's a bird.
But yeah, I felt like I was saying that Victoria, even though she was captured kind of a lot, I think like once per serial that she was in, to be honest, I know you said this before, she didn't fall into that damsel in distress trope, because even when she was captured, she was still doing things. Mm-hmm. It's not like she was just sitting there in a cell. She was either trying to escape or like working behind the scenes or something. Like in
Abominable Snowman, she tries to escape.
That hilarious plan to escape.
The Ice Warriors, she sort of escapes and tells the Doctor what's going on with the Ice Warriors. Enemy of the World, they get captured intentionally. Web of Fear, she was trying to still help the Doctor. She ended up escaping and then getting captured again. So yeah, I mean, in this one,
but yeah,
too.
I mean, even if in some of her instances she didn't contribute through her actions, she definitely contributed to the dialogue a lot.
Yeah,
and definitely her character, I feel like, developed the second Doctor's character a lot, like more than any of the other companions. I mean, Jamie in the long run, I guess, will have done more, but like Victoria, with some of the scenes between Victoria and the second Doctor, you can clearly see like that this is developing the second Doctor's character, or revealing more about him that you didn't know before.
Right.
Which I guess that doesn't say much about Victoria as a character, but like there was that scene in Tomb of the Cybermen where they were talking about how like she misses her time period or whatever, or I guess her father, not really her time period, as she mentioned in this serial. But like the Doctor, her dad sacrificed himself to save the Doctor, and like the Doctor never used that. I don't want to say against her, but he never
boasted about it to Victoria, to be like, this is what you got to live up to, Victoria. Your dad sacrificed himself for me. How far are you going to go? The Doctor kept it a secret the whole time. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure she didn't even know. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't know that he sacrificed himself for the Doctor. Yeah, and that definitely goes to show that the Doctor put other people's like happiness before his own, as is expanded upon in this serial and others. But yeah, I mean that was really good. What was the other scene
that really developed the second Doctor's character with Victoria that we were talking about? There was another one.
What serial was it in?
It was one of the recent ones, wasn't it? Crap. Well,
just overall, he's been pretty comforting to Victoria, and I think that's because when her father died, he was like, "Take care of my daughter for me, please." And the Doctor had to kind of fall into this surrogate father role. Not surrogate necessarily, but like a fatherly role for Victoria, because, you know, her father is lying in a grave in Victorian England. And,
well, on Skaro.
Oh yeah, on Skaro, actually. You're right. I forgot about that whole plot thread about destroying all the Daleks. Ay. Wow.
Yeah, so her dad is worm food on Skaro.
Wow.
But yeah. That I guess that doesn't really say. I guess that this doesn't really say much about Victoria as a character, but she developed the second Doctor's character a lot.
Yeah, well, and she had a character development of her own. I mean, you saw her start as this timid, adventurous girl, and over the past, 7 serials, she's grown into a lot more than that. She's a lot more confident and willing to, you know, do things to save other people.
Like scream into microphones.
Yeah, well, even if she's more confident, there was supposedly a very subtle thread that they tried to make her scream more than previous companions to, like, indicate, you know, she's more afraid than, you know, Susan or Vicky or Dodo.
Right. Ultimately leading up to the fact that she doesn't want to be in danger anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you go back and watch those serials knowing that you'd see it. But,
yeah.
like, we didn't notice it at all, so I guess it was too subtle.
Yeah.
And I guess you can attribute the fact to that she sort of just... What am I saying here? I guess you can attribute the fact that her write-out was sort of out of the blue here to the fact that, maybe she was just bottling up her emotions about not wanting to continue traveling with the Doctor, and maybe she just had to let it out all here.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's a TV show, so like it would be nice if there was something hinting at it or leading up to it before the serial. But at least they didn't pull a Dodo.
Is Dodo just a token bad write-out we have to compare everything to?
Well, she is. I mean, there were other abrupt write-outs, like Ian and Barbara's was pretty abrupt. But at the same time, I feel that one was still pretty good because it was introduced in such a way that, like, that was Ian and Barbara's possibly one chance to return to their own time, and they had to decide whether to take it or not.
Yeah, I mean, the same with Ben and Polly.
Yeah, to a worse extent, because they kind of just didn't appear at all in their final episodes.
Hey, they got captured by chameleons. Yeah, Victoria Waterfield.
So
we
overall,
salute you.
She's probably my second or third favorite companion.
I'm going to say she's probably my third, but she's definitely my favorite female companion. My favorite companion is a toss-up still between Ian and Jamie. Going to decide on Jamie when we see his write-out.
You know, honestly...
I think a bad write-out can ruin a good companion. At least to some extent. Not like totally, but I think it can drag down the companion. If you remember them because of their write-out and because their write-out was bad. Like, we remember Dodo because her write-out was bad, but, like, she wasn't that bad of a character.
No, she wasn't. But I still don't think, even if Jamie gets a pretty bad write-out, it won't ruin him as a character for me. I think he'll still be my favorite companion, and he is so far.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Unless, like, he completely breaks character in his final serial and, like, does a bunch of stupid stuff.
He just turns to the camera and is like...
Have a nice Christmas. No.
And incidentally, Merry Christmas to you, too. And then he just gets shot or something. Pull a Brett Viron. Get shot by your own sister.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think a bad write-out can fully ruin a companion for me.
Well, it won't fully ruin them, but they will tarnish their memory of them. Like, it's going to be... the first thing we'll think about when we think about Dodo is going to be her bad write-out.
I guess. Hopefully, Jamie's write-out won't be so bad that happens, and that we think about his memorable moments.
His hilarious banter with the Doctor.
Yes. But yeah, that's Victoria. I'm sad
to see her go.
I am too. As I was watching this serial, I definitely thought she was going to get a last minute terrible write-out, and she didn't really, so I was okay with this write-out overall.
The write-outs are back on the upswing, I think. There was a dip with Steven and Dodo, and I guess Katarina, if you're going to count her as a companion, and Sarah Kingdom, if you're going to count her too. They both died in the same serial. But there's been an upswing, like Ben and Polly's was better than Dodo's, and this is better than Ben and Polly's. So we're going back up. We're going to see how Jamie or whatever the next companion's write-out will be.
Then again, if you have to say that Companion's write-out is good because they actually did something in their final episode, then, I mean, that speaks for what this show's given us so far. But like you said, hopefully we'll be getting some better things in the future. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're going to introduce a new companion next serial. There's really no basis for that. It's just an assumption I have, or a guess.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't know. They could. I mean, they introduced Victoria in the final serial of the season, so...
Yeah, they did. Which, I mean, I was going to say they wouldn't do that in the final serial of the season, but no, Victoria was. I don't know, it's just a baseless assumption I have, and we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I mean, didn't Ben and Polly got introduced...
Yeah, they got introduced in the final serial of season...
in the final serial of their season.
3. That was season 3, wow.
Yeah, we're about to enter season 6. 2 weeks from when this episode goes out. Our first episode will go out on season 6.
And what I always think is interesting is, like, we don't experience the companions for that long because of the way we're watching the show. But if you were watching this back in the 60s, like Victoria, who had kind of a short run, would have been around for, like, a year, probably.
Yeah, because she would have been introduced in The Evil of the Daleks, and then there would have been this, like, 3 or 4 month period where everyone gets to speculate on what they think Victoria is going to do, and then you enter season 5 and you get Tomb and Cyberman, Abominable Snowman, Ice Warriors.
It's like 35 serials right there, or episodes right there.
Episodes. No. It's actually 41, I think, to be exact.
41. Yeah,
41.
She was there for she was on screen for almost a year, and then there was that period, like you said, where they were producing the new season or whatever. So yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's an advantage or disadvantage, I guess. I mean, if you get to experience them for like their full year-long tenure, I guess you get to be more like...
be more attached to them.
Yeah, you get more attached to them, definitely. But on the other hand...
Do you really want to spend a year watching? No.
On the other hand, by like watching them so close together, we can see a lot more of the characterization that plays out between the serials instead of having to like expand it over a year.
Like the screaming thing, that would have been even less noticeable if you had to watch this over the course of a year.
Yeah. So, I think that about wraps up.
Yeah, that's Victoria.
Victoria. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about? I think now we covered everything on our
list of things we said yesterday that we needed to say again. Yeah, that's that.
So, email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Do you somehow have a copy of our original recording of this episode? Because you hacked into my computer last night while I was going to edit it? Then email us and give it back.
Please.
Check us out on the interwebs at decorativevegetable.com. Check us out on Facebook at Trust Your Doctor, and check us out on iTunes at Trust Your Doctor. Leave a rating if you like the show. Thanks.
Yes, next week we have The Wheel in Space. Will it feature a wheel? Will it be in space? I hope so. But until then, the end.